Hi, everyone. Welcome to Aviation Careers Podcast. Today, we're going to talk about becoming an aviation mechanic. And you can actually become a mechanic for less than $60,000 a year. I am very excited to talk to somebody that actually helps people to realize their dreams of becoming a mechanic. As you know, I'm a big advocate for being an aviation mechanic. We've had, about over 10 years ago, we had a guest on that was one of the first female mechanics for actually an airline, which was really cool. And today we're going to focus on that job of being a mechanic. We're going to do a really deep dive because Mark is very knowledgeable on being an aircraft mechanic. You know, aircraft fleets are growing and the number of hours flown, they keep increasing. And obviously to fly these planes, they're going to need more mechanics, both now and also in the future. So the prospects are really good. If you look at like the Bureau of Labor Statistics and all, there's pretty much a 5% year increase in mechanics as far as numbers. But to actually put some really detail to that and also some more stats, again, is Mark Joy. Hey, Mark, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, Carl. Good to be here. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
Yeah, Mark, you actually have a lot of experience. I was watching your dossier with over 15 years as an AMP and with a specialized background in drone research and development. I think that's super cool. And also, you're a pilot, just like me.
Thank you. It's been a while since I've flown, but yeah, I did get my pilot's license back in I think it was 2005.
Oh, cool. And that helps, I think, with
Yep.
being a mechanic and especially talking to folks. But one of the things that and this is going to be very helpful for me when I'm advising people as far as getting into the career of being a mechanic is that I normally say it can be a little bit daunting as far as time, but also it can be quite expensive. But you're going to kind of go through some of those things as far as dispelling maybe some of those myths that it's going to cost you over $100,000 to become a mechanic. But you have a methodology and a system that can actually get you through that without spending $100,000.
Yeah, sure, exactly. Yeah, go ahead.
So one of the things that I really want to talk about first, because a lot of people out there say, you know, why would I want to become a mechanic? Well, you become a mechanic just like you do any other career because you really love the job. So before we even get into all that about how to become one, I'm really curious, you know, Mark, why do you like being a mechanic or love being a mechanic, really, I should say?
Yeah, sure. So first and foremost, I think the biggest thing that I enjoy about it is sort of the fulfillment of making things work again. Not to say that that all of aircraft maintenance is fixing things that are broken. There are a lot of inspections or inspecting that goes on, but is that kind of that feeling like you took something that was broken and you made it work again? Like that's the biggest thing, like having an aha moment. I fixed it, it works, and getting to see the airplane fly away, like that's an awesome feeling. And I was also diagnosed with ADHD a few years ago. I think it's been 3 or 4 years, and that kind of clicked. And kind of looking back on my experience, like being able to work with your hands really helps you get into the super focused flow state. So like you just really get into it with your hands on the parts and pieces and stuff. So I definitely like that part about going along with ADHD, and also enjoying solving hard problems. Like there's no shortage of hard problems to solve in aviation maintenance. So just getting to tackle new things each and every day it's a really cool thing.
I think that is awesome about the job. That's probably my favorite thing about being a mechanic. I wanted to be a mechanic at one point and looked into it. Decided not to go that route. I actually went into fixing computers. You've probably heard people say that, and that's what I did for the first part of my career was computers, and then I got into designing software and that type of thing. That
Wow.
similar type of mentality of fixing things and building things and all is something I think that kind of transfers well into the realm of being a mechanic, especially somebody who just loves to keep on doing things. That's for sure. Very cool, very neat. It's great to really use your mind. But when you do that, when you define this mechanic idea, and I took some of those tests, and they said you should become a mechanic. I was like, well, what is a mechanic? There's so many different types. Obviously, this Aviation Careers podcast, we're going to focus mainly on the mechanic jobs in aviation. But even in aviation, there's all sorts of maintenance jobs. So what type of different opportunities are there out there as a mechanic?
Yeah, so there are tons of different jobs. So I think mainly people would probably think of like an airline mechanic. So the kind of like the civilian part of aviation. But I've got like thinking of a laundry list of things that you can do. You can work for aircraft manufacturers, building aircraft up, places like Boeing or Airbus. But aside from that, also airlines, obviously. But at the airlines, you can work in line maintenance where you're going out and troubleshooting the problems that are coming up as they arise. You can also work in the hangar where you're doing the inspections, kind of like on the scheduled maintenance basis. You can work in general aviation on smaller aircraft or kind of like the piston-driven airplanes, that kind of thing. If that's what you enjoy, you can also do contracting if you like to bounce around between different types of work, like work on big airplanes, small airplanes, helicopters, what have you. So you can just bounce around if you like to have a lot of variation in your work, and you can do contracting for civilian or for the military or the government. I did a small, I should say probably about 5 years of contracting with the government at General Atomics, and that was working on their Predator drones. So contracting is definitely an option for maintenance. And of course, drones are very popular right now. So there are a lot of different things that you can do with drones. So there are drone delivery services out there like Google Wing, Zipline, Mana, and Amazon. I most recently came from Amazon, working on their R&D drone delivery project. And so I'm anticipating that they're just going to they're starting to already, but just as they kind of expand and build their program out, there's going to be quite a need for mechanics there as well. And there would be like varying degrees of skill levels that they would need, but that's just another option. Drone manufacturing repair, like at the consumer level, drones for the military and the government, like the kind of like the Predator series, like they're not only used in the military but also for customs and border patrol. So like there are different government operations, and then also data collection, and just a few others here. Space, so like space travel and rockets, that sort of thing, satellites. You could use your A&P to work on that kind of thing, and then there are even further specializations down into all of those different industries, working in like structures with sheet metal and composites, non-destructive testing, avionics, power plants, like specializing in just working on power plants, manufacturing and assembly, quality assurance, and just like R&D in general. So that's my huge laundry list.
Wow.
Sorry to take the mic from you, but just tons of different options out there.
So then,
hopefully that helps kind of like paint the picture of the different things that you can do.
So when you mentioned government contracts twice, interestingly, I think a lot of people don't realize that, I'm near a military base not far away, and they use a lot of contractors to do work on their aircraft. And
Okay.
I had always assumed that was true. That was just military that do that. That's not true, is it?
No, just plenty of people that are civilians that work for companies like Lockheed and Northrop Grumman and that sort of thing. So they hire tons of civilians to do contract work, and yeah, just lots of different things, like not only military folks doing the maintenance, but civilians as well.
One thing that was interesting when I was actually working with this one maintenance school, they used to let me use their facilities for lectures, is that I always heard people talk about they got jobs in other industries. One of them was like in the yacht building industry, which I thought was awesome. So you can actually use these skills in other industries. What would be some examples, maybe?
Yeah, some other examples, amusement parks. That's kind of like a unique one. So if you were interested in working on roller coasters, you can use your A&P for that if you wanted to. Definitely transferable skill. The A&P in general, but renewable energy like wind turbines and solar, railroads, and any other sorts of manufacturing kind of jobs, and lots of other hands-on sort of skilled trades. So you can still, if say you get your A&P and you decide that you don't like working on aircraft, you can still use it to do other things out there as well.
You know, it's funny you laugh when you say amusement parks. Actually, that was the industry that my wife was in, and that's a big and growing industry. In Maine, such a huge part of that. So these are things I think people don't even think about. That these are transferable skills. So getting your AMP, I mean, that really means something,
Right,
especially those employers, which I think is awesome.
for sure.
But but moving back into airplanes, I mean, that's kind of why we're talking today, more so focusing on airplane mechanics. One of the things that I think is really important is that people realize that if they're going to do this, they're going to actually have a job. So, what does future hiring look like in this industry?
Yeah, so I think when you gave the intro, you mentioned a bit about the Bureau of Labor, and mentioning kind of like 5% growth. And so I've kind of been checking over the past year or so, but yeah, overall for aircraft mechanics, 5% growth over the next 10 years, so into 2023. That's just kind of like every sort of profession in the aircraft maintenance realm. And then aside from that, 8% growth for avionics within that, which is a lot of what I have done as well. But yeah, just 5% overall. I think that's really, really cool to see. And that also equates to about 13,000 job openings per year. So I would say you've got a pretty decent shot if you become an aircraft mechanic at finding a job. And of course, if the Bureau of Labor is wrong, and even if it's 50% of that, you're still like 7,500 jobs. Say they overshot the numbers. You still got a pretty good chance of landing a job out there. So that's cool to see. And the main reason is because of folks retiring. So a lot of the generation from the 60s, 70s, 80s kind of retiring. Maybe my math isn't quite right there. But a generation of folks retiring. So just there's a need for those folks to be replaced. And as people are probably progressing their careers to maybe moving on to things outside of maintenance, the roles need to be filled. So and there will also be a growth in passenger travel and shipping demand. We know people are shopping online more, so just more demand to move packages and goods across the world, and also maybe even seeing an uptick in space operations. So kind of like seeing SpaceX getting to work now, and who knows, maybe sending humans up into space more frequently. Maybe that's outside of 10 years, but yeah, space travel is seeing an uptick as well.
Wow. You know, it's interesting as you drive into some of those, some of it's really nuanced. For instance, we talk about, say the airlines and more mechanics needed there. There's another part of that's growing, and that's like the premium type of travel, which adds maintenance to an actual airplane and therefore the airlines, where they're having things like suites and chairs that move and walls that retract. So therefore you need more mechanics per airplane, thus adding to those jobs. Another thing that's interesting is that you mentioned avionics, an 8% growth there, which is higher than the average growth in the industry. I also kind of took a look, and the avionics technicians definitely make more than the regular AMPs because of that demand. And it seemed in some cases it was like 10 to 20% more from what I could tell from the rough numbers that I looked at.
Yeah, that seemed like what I was seeing as well. And kind of piggybacking off what you were mentioning about just kind of fancy seats and electronics and all of that. So I think it's just sort of inevitable knowing that AI is becoming more prevalent, but just we know that technology, it just kind of grows exponentially. So I think everything is just more or less like a flying robot at this point. Still need pilots, obviously, but the machines, the aircraft are becoming more and more sophisticated. So I think that's going to draw a definite need for folks that are in avionics, and the airframes stick around for several years, but the guts can be upgraded to keep the aircraft flying. So it's like same airframe, but higher technology. So that's going to require avionics technicians to make that happen.
Yeah, especially for someone who's into like computers and computer repair. I think this is a good add-on is becoming an aviation maintenance technician. And another part of that industry that's growing is the simulator world. Boy, you see these simulator companies growing. And the folks that I talk to, I teach in a simulator. And it's pretty amazing how many people have come from the aviation maintenance background. And you know what I hear a lot of times from people that do that job instead is that they like being inside in the air conditioning all day.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Although
Yes.
I'm not sure I like that so much because when they mean air conditioning, they really mean air conditioning in these big computer rooms. I mean, it's
Keeping them
freezing
cool.
cold. They have jackets on all the
Yeah,
time.
yeah,
That's a little bit too cold.
yeah.
But and that's the really neat thing about this license, and is the fact that you can go out and use that aviation license and mechanics license in a lot of different realms. But let's switch to. I mean, you have me sold, and I have a lot of people that listen that are sold on the idea of maintenance. That process of getting your license, how do you go about it? I mean, and how much money do you think it's going to be to actually get your license?
So it can vary pretty greatly, but the as far as the process goes, um, I'm sure you can find it giving a Google, but also looking on the FAA's website. But the basic process, you either need to go to school at a Part 147 approved school where you complete that program, and basically gives you a certificate that says you can take the tests to become an A&P. And the second route would be to get on the job training, and you can acquire that as a civilian by doing things like working at an MRO, major repair or overhaul facility, or by joining the military. Like you can use military experience as well. And so the kind of the timeline to do that, for if you're going to go to a school, there are schools out there that are graduating people in a year. It varies pretty greatly across the board, but I've seen schools advertising as little as 1 year. And of course, if you go through the military, you're likely going to have to be there for, I think, enlisted for 4 years minimum. But yeah, the price for school, I've seen kind of like in the $60K range at the high side, and at the low side, for community college, it's going to be in the tens of thousands of dollars, probably lower. And like one thing that you can do is apply for scholarships or Pell Grants to get that cost down. So that's kind of what I'm seeing. So. I hope I answered your question there, and
Yeah, no,
I hope
absolutely.
I
So you really
didn't derail there.
no, that's perfect. I mean, that was great. As a matter of fact, you don't need to spend a lot of your own money, and that's kind of the really the meat of the matter here we want to get into. And I'm glad you mentioned scholarships. By the way, we have the largest scholarship guide out there, and a lot of those scholarships are for mechanics, and you can find those aviationcareerspodcast.com/ scholarships. And if you want to get one for free, aviationcareerspodcast.com/free. But it's only $10 and it gives you a year access. And we've really fought to put more and more aviation mechanic and maintenance scholarships in there. Also, another side I want to talk about there, make sure you look at that scholarship, because some of those scholarships may say aviation and it won't say anything about maintenance, but it actually will allow you to use that scholarship to go towards your AMTs. And make sure you look at that specific college or scholarship. So what I'm trying to say is, whenever you're looking at any of these big scholarships, guys, just go out there, read them all, because one might actually apply. STEM scholarships, etc. So that's one way. Obviously, first way is to win the lottery. That's number one. That's a great best way to pay for it. Then the second part was like winning the lottery is get a scholarship. So okay, so you didn't win the lottery, you didn't win a scholarship. Now you're thinking, I'm going to be spending $100,000 to get actually a mechanics license, but actually, you don't have to, do you?
Yeah, exactly. And I think the main thing that I have learned kind of over the years is that first of all, I mentioned working for a place like an MRO or maybe like a repair station, something along those lines, of a Part 145 repair station. So working at places like those, you can get paid to do the work, and the pay can be kind of low there, but excuse me, but sort of the trade-off or thing that you're going to gain is that they can, in some cases, pay for you to get your A&P. So like you work there for, you need either 18 or 30 months to get your A&P of on-the-job training experience if you're going to go that route. And to note also, 18 months to get one certificate or the other, airframe or power plant, 30 months to get both. So you save a couple months there. But yeah, as far as employers go, really the biggest thing that I want to emphasize is that you don't have to go to the most expensive school. Like, it doesn't matter that much to employers, because really the A&P license is a license to learn, and excuse me, yeah, it's a license to learn, and employers are just going to see you have it or you don't, and you're going to need to be trained up on whatever airframe that you're working on. Also, like if you work for an airline or something like that. But even if you go to like a general aviation shop, like you're going to have to still have somebody kind of walk you through that's working there already, and just kind of like get you to understand the actual work on the specific aircraft that you're working on. So there's going to be some level of getting accustomed to the actual aircraft that you're going to be working on anyway. And so it's really, the certificate is to say, I'm familiar with how aircraft work. I'm familiar with the practices to repair and keep aircraft airworthy, and I'm capable of learning specifically how to work on whatever aircraft you need to have worked on. So that's kind of like the main thing that I want to emphasize.
Absolutely. You mentioned the general aviation and the Part 145, which are those repair station operators. They're certified by the FAA. They can do inspections, alterations, that kind of thing. But your small shops can do those too. It's just a little bit different. They have to have an IA on staff that does that. It's slightly different. It's not quite as regulated as the 145, but it's still, you're under that certification that's regulated by the FAA when you go to a small aircraft mechanics shop. And I think you're going to get some great experience, in my opinion, in both of those places. Yeah. Hopefully you agree with that.
Yeah. Yes.
But how about you see, going back to what you said about if they don't care what kind of, the school you went to or whatever, there's all these big Part 147 schools, and those are authorized schools by the FAA. We can get your licenses fairly quickly. And I have friends that have done that. They've gone through it, and it is not, they're normally not very, they're not cheap. Let's put it that way. As a matter of fact, they're usually the more expensive of the options. So that is actually something I'd like to hear your opinion on as far as the 147 programs are concerned. What is your feeling?
Yeah, so I think you can only do so much in a school. So I went to a Part 147 school at Western Michigan University. Go Broncos. Um, but yeah, like you're they can have a high price tag, but you're still working in sort of a lab setting, and so it's going to be kind of a bit more difficult to get the actual like real world experience. So just thinking about the school that I went to, it's like engines on a stand, and I think there we did have some aircraft there, but it's sort of like difficult to get into like the real world. Um, Real world, you're here working for a legit maintenance operation, go through all the steps, paperwork, using their documentation systems, et cetera. So there's sort of like an element that gets lost by going to a school versus on the job training. It's not to say that like one lacks compared to the other, but they both have their pros and cons. So yeah, I think as far as price goes, like to me, it's not really it's really up to you how much you want to spend in that case, because you're still going to come out of the school with your A&P. And so yeah, does that answer kind of what you're looking for?
Absolutely. Yeah. So you're looking at, a real world experience, I think is terrific. It also, I think the real world experience, one thing I do like about that, and I'm not saying that the 147s are great. I mean, don't get me wrong, but they're usually more expensive. But having that real world experience, you also have that other element of the stress involved with dealing with customers. That is something you may not see so much in the 147, and
Yeah.
boy, is that enlightening.
Yeah, for sure. You don't you don't have the customer interaction. I remember at least working at Duncan Aviation, where the customers would like walk around and check out their jets, and in some cases have the customer like right behind your shoulder watching what you're doing. So that's kind of interesting. That's not anything that I ever remember feeling at Part 147 school. So yeah, some of those like small real world elements you kind of miss on the Part 147 school.
Yeah, absolutely. But either one, they're great. But I do like the fact that if you don't go to 147, you'll pay less. I understand that a lot of the advertisements you're going to see out there is the fact that they have all these relationships with all these different employers. What would you say to someone that's is concerned about that if they don't go to a 147, that they possibly won't get hired because they won't have those different relationships with employers?
I think you'll still be able to find jobs. So it's, I think you'll still be able to really still be able to find a job. Like you can jump on LinkedIn and find jobs. And like I said, it's the main thing is like you have your A&P or you don't. And I think the thing that's going to be lacking is just sort of that the networking bit where like a school is partnered with different employers, but I think also working in the industry to get your A&P, I think you're still going to be making some connections with different folks. Like I think the aviation community is pretty tight knit. So like there are still opportunities to network while you're if you were to go the on the job training route, still opportunities to network with people who knows somebody who can help you get a job. So I think there's still opportunities to pretty easily find jobs out there if you don't go to a school.
Yeah, I like what you said about networking. That is so important in anything, in any type of environment. Network. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Mark, I tell you, this has been awesome, but there's still a lot of people out there that are under some misconceptions about becoming a mechanic. A couple things, like I heard this when I was talking to somebody about getting my A&P back when, and I said, I fix computers. I do soldering, I do all this, and they're like, well, that doesn't mean you can become a mechanic. Just like people say, hey, I've never picked up a wrench before. That doesn't mean you can't fix airplanes. I think that's a big one. I'd like to hear what are some of the misconceptions that you've heard of.
Yeah, I've been seeing that. Like I follow some Reddit threads, and I've seen people saying, um, I've never worked on anything, like I've never, like you said, never picked up a wrench, or like I don't have any hands-on experience. I'm afraid I'm interested in becoming a mechanic. I'm afraid that I'm going to go to school and I'm not going to be able to not be able to do it. And I think that's simply not the case. Like there, there in life, there can be anything that you try that you could fail at. I would I would say that. But if you go and try, like you don't have to have hands-on experience. Like you're going to school for someone to teach you to do that, and they're going to help you, try to help you succeed. And if they're not trying to help you, that's unfortunate. But you can also ask a lot of questions. School, I think, is more of like a pull system. So like you can get out of it what you want out of it. And if you're, if especially if you're paying a big chunk of money, that should be even more motivation to say, hey, I don't have any hands-on experience. Like, can you give me some extra help out here? And that's like part of learning to become a mechanic, is being able to identify tools and learn how to use them. And I think there, in any situation going into a school like that, or any school for that matter, everyone has a different level of experience. And so everybody is going to bring something to the different to the starting line. And I think it's just a matter of like having the mindset of helping, wanting to help people that are around you. So like if you can do that and have that mindset, students helping other students, not only the students helping each other, but the instructors helping each other, or helping the students rather. So yeah, I would say don't be discouraged about that. Like if you're at all interested, don't be discouraged from at least trying. If it's something that you're interested in, and if it turns out to not be something that you're interested in after you try, you can always do something else, because that's sort of like the reverse the reverse of my experience. I thought I wanted to be a pilot for the longest time, and got to doing the actual flight training, and I had a ton of anxiety, and so I got my private pilot's license, but it was just kind of a bit overwhelming, and so like transitioning to maintenance, that was really like where I found my place, if you will. So, but yeah, going back to like enjoying the hands-on work that I mentioned at the beginning, and just kind of like getting in that flow state with the hands-on work. It's not to say that you can't be in a rush, or in a situation where you need to be moving quickly and are under pressure as a mechanic. But for me, it was a different kind of atmosphere in general. So so yeah, speaking to not having any experience at all, I would say don't be discouraged from trying.
You know, you mentioned about not being in a rush. I know that, it's different than flying where you have an emergency or whatever situation, you got to deal with it right then and there. These are, more analytical and working on things. And, but there is an environment that you're working in that's, it's mechanical. So you do have to really pay attention, and that's something that, just from a practical standpoint, yeah, you got to be careful. Just like in anything else, and safety is so important. But I hear a lot of people say that. So I'd love to hear your viewpoint on that. They'll say, "Oh, I don't want to be a mechanic because I'll get hurt." What would you say to that?
It's possible, but there, I would say that there are a lot of safety protocols, a lot of safety training with employers. At least in my experiences, lots of safety training, lots of personal protective equipment. So, assuming that you wear it correctly, so things like safety glasses and hearing protection, and gloves and that sort of thing. So, I think as long as you're following the maintenance manuals, where they the people who are manufacturing the airplanes have specifically written the manuals so that if there's a step where there is a chance of being injured or breaking something, that is called out in the steps. So you have to be diligent in following the steps. The maintenance manuals is sort of like the gospel of fixing airplanes. And so, yeah, I would say as long as you are a careful person and like keep your head on a swivel and just have try to have some situational awareness, like extra situational awareness, that you're working in an environment where someone can really get hurt. I think just having that extra bit of caution and like a safety mindset will keep you safe. I don't. I'm trying to think of my experiences, and like I never got caught in between a thrust reverser or anything like that. But yeah, just like scrapes and cuts like those are probably the most normal thing. And I think just generally at workplaces, slips, trips, and falls are the biggest things that happen. But I would say you could probably work in construction or something like that and probably have similar risks. Just kind of thinking of that as an example. But if you follow the instructions and you keep safety in the forefront of what you're doing, and just being conscious of that, like I don't think it's like extremely risky, or if there's a statistic that I've seen that's like, if you are an aircraft mechanic, there's a 25% chance that you're going to be amputated or something like that. I don't know.
Wow, yeah, that's kind of that'd be kind of rough. No one would ever get into it. That's for sure.
Sorry, I probably have a bit of dark humor. I'm sorry, but yeah,
I get it. You know, there are those misperceptions out there and misconceptions. You know, it's interesting. You talk about the physical part of it, but the other part of it too is, and this gets a lot of people nervous, is not only do you have this environment that you might be able to get hurt, which obviously it's not 25% chance of being amputated, but the other thing you have to do when you're getting your license, you got to pass all these tests, and both practical and also written tests. So speak towards that as far as, I know there's some people that are kind of nervous. Maybe they didn't think they're the best in school possibly, and they're kind of afraid of tests.
Yeah, so pretty big misconception is people doubting that they'll pass the tests. And so just to kind of give a quick overview, you mentioned not only written tests but the practical tests. So there are 3 written tests. If you get both your A and P, 3 written tests. So there's a general and power plant and airframe written tests that you have to take. And so those you have to pass with a 70%, and they're all multiple choice. And so there are lots of different study guides out there by companies like ASA and Jeppesen. So there are study guides that apply to apply generally to the testing. So that goes with both the written and the oral and practical tests. So there are resources that are out there. You can buy books, and I think I've seen like flashcards as well. And I've also seen people reading the study guides on YouTube. If you want to get an audio version, not sure if there's a copyright infringement there, but yeah, there are resources, and also like if you go to a Part 147 school, they'll usually do some sort of prep for your A&P, where you can ask questions about the process, and your instructors should be really knowledgeable about that. And there are also, I don't know if I want to call them boot camps, but like crash courses, or just like really generally test prep courses, where like there are instructors who will go through and do like mock tests and do mock practical hands-on tasks with you that you might encounter on the test. So I would say don't be discouraged from being worried that you're gonna fail the tests, and you can also retake them as many times as you want. You'll have to pay for it, but you can still retake the tests. And with the oral and practical, you only have to retake the parts that you failed. So it's kind of like you can make progress and just go back and get instruction on what you failed, and then go finish that part with your DME or designated mechanic examiner.
Interesting. So there's a lot of ways to get help to prepare for this test.
Yeah.
Is what I'm hearing. So
Yes.
if you need help and over prepare, I mean, and the more you do, the better. And I always tell people that if you're afraid of failing, just over prepare, and the more you test, the more you practice, the easier it gets. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Let's shift gears to that part, to also the money part, and that's one thing we love to talk about here because a lot of people are afraid to talk money. So as far as wages and aircraft mechanic wages, there's a lot of I think there might be some misperceptions. So let's figure that out. Do you have examples as to maybe a breakdown of how much people make?
Sure. So back to the stats I was talking about with the Employment Outlook, the Bureau of Labor. They also had some stats on the wages. So looking at 2023, I know we're into 2025 now, but just knowing that there is going to be growth, I would anticipate the wages would keep up. But for 2023, the median wage for mechanics was $75,000 per year, and the top 10% was $115K, and then the bottom 10% was $45K or less. So I think this is a pretty lucrative career. There are lots of opportunities for overtime out there. There's shift work as well. So if you were working say an off shift, there's usually a premium for working an off shift. So second or third shift, there's likely going to be some extra pay involved with that. So a combination of those, and if there are opportunities where you're working where it's like you can have all the overtime you want, it would really be up to you. As much overtime as you want to work. And then my experience personally working for General Atomics as a government contractor, I think that there are also opportunities out there where you can go into areas of conflict, and there's a very, very high what's the word I'm looking for? Premium. Yeah. Thank you. For going into those areas, some more dangerous than others. But depending on the job and where you're at, in my case, at least, you were getting paid 12 hours a day. Even if you worked less than that, you still got paid for 12 hours a day. And you got that hazard pay premium for being in an area of conflict. So if you're interested in traveling the world, and kind of like working with the military, like on military projects, that would be an option. But I would say those jobs, if you wanted to, would probably go like up into the 100K range. So that's another option to consider.
Yeah, that's really good pay, that's for sure. And just realize that, when you start off, you're not going to make that.
Yeah, right.
You have to pay your dues, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And do you have any idea about where starting salaries are in that world?
The starting salary, I'm not exactly sure. I just know that the median wage was between $33 and $34 an hour, somewhere in there.
Gotcha.
So yeah, you got me stumped on what the starting salary would be.
So really, I hear this all the time. It's like, well, I want to come out, I'm going to make $100,000 a year, and I don't think that's going to happen because you really need to gain some experience.
Right.
And there's those levels. I think same thing in anything. The first few years, 2 to 5 years, then you get more experience and you get better pay, and then you move up from there. And that's where they're talking about the more experienced people that worked on different things. They're in the top 10%. But not a bad salary at all. I mean, that's $115,000 for the top 10%, and you can put yourself there in many different ways.
Right.
And also that what you said about overtime, I think that's really important too. I mean, you can make that kind of money just working a lot more shifts. That's for sure. But Mark, this has been great. We broke down a lot of things here, and this is just a really deep dive. But you also have something that if people want to take away from this, they can actually get something and take it with them, and that's a downloadable guide. It's called The Ultimate Guide on How to Become a Mechanic. And tell us a little bit about what they'll find in that.
Yeah, so in that guide, you can find it's basically, in layman's terms, breaks down all of the different ways that you can get your A&P, and a list of the pros and cons for each, and also has a lot of links out to different resources that are out there. So like the FAA's website, where to find Part 147 schools. So like you can type in your zip code and search for schools in your area, and a lot of other good links in there. But I have kind of found that people are really not sure how the process works. And then just from like looking on the FAA's website, I don't mean to talk negatively about the FAA's website, but it felt like I kind of had to piece together some of the ways that they were explaining how to do it. So I kind of tried to, in this guide, kind of lay everything out for everyone in like a step-by-step way. And then I also at the very end of it have kind of like a flow chart that shows the different paths you can take. So yeah, feel free to check that out. My website, markhjoy.com/guide, GUIDE. Download that for free. Hope that helps you out. And yeah, I'm absolutely open to answering any questions anyone has anytime. Would love to help folks out if they have more questions about this.
Absolutely. Yeah, as a matter of fact, as we were talking, I just downloaded it. So as you were talking, it was that simple to download it and get that guide. So make sure you check it out. I have it in the show notes. I also have it in the comments down below. And make sure you go check that out because it's a great resource. I was just kind of scrolling through it while you were talking. Really well put together. Mark, thanks so much for coming here. I really appreciate this. This has been a real deep dive, like we said we were going to do. It's a little bit longer than our normal episode, but I really wanted to go over a lot of different things, and we could speak for hours and even get into some of those other niches that we talked about. And really, the other thing I'd like to do is make sure people can go out and reach out to somebody just like yourself. So it's Mark at markhjoy.com is the email address where they can find you, right?
Yep, exactly.
Perfect. So definitely check that out. Become an Aircraft Mechanic, the Ultimate Guide. It's a free PDF download. All you have to do is put your email address in there, and they'll send it to you. And that actually will help you. And also, if you know anybody who's interested in becoming a mechanic, they can reach out to Mark. If you have questions, of course, you can go to aviationcareerspodcast.com/contact. Also, feedback at aviationcareerspodcast.com, and we will forward those questions on to Mark and possibly answer some of those questions and maybe in a future session or in one of our coaching sessions. We're actually having a coaching session tonight. Check out those coaching sessions. We have a group session where we talk all these questions and we put them on there so they can be answered. It's really inexpensive. If you want to get into that group session, it's really inexpensive. It's only $20 a month right now in 2025, and you get a free month by just using the coupon code Coach It Forward. Your first month is free if you use that coupon. And we're going to talk a little bit about this on one of our sessions as far as becoming a mechanic. I know most people are there into the flying side of that, but also Mark has a lot of resources, so make sure you check those out there. So Mark, again, thanks so much for being here and being an advocate for aviation mechanics. My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me, Carl. Really appreciate it. And if you're looking at something in the field of aviation, such as becoming a mechanic, being a pilot, flight attendant, or an engineer that fixes equipment at the airport, or if you want to get your MBA and become in management, the thing that I would like you to do for me is make sure that you don't stop here. Do some research, go on the internet, do something every single day to help yourself move forward in your career and in your life. So definitely take that step today. Again, it could just be signing up for Mark's guide and downloading that guide, or it could be watching some YouTube videos out there. There's some really great stuff, but most importantly, take steps today to move forward in your career, in your life, and I know you'll get there sooner than you think. We'll talk to you next episode. Safe flying out there.